All right, good morning, good morning. It's wonderful to see some old friends and new faces here today. I'm Ann Steensland. I coordinate the Global Agricultural Productivity Initiative at Virginia Tech, and I also am the author of the GAP Report. So we're really happy to have all of you here today. This is our 10th annual GAP Report launch and the first to be produced by Virginia Tech. So I'm really thrilled that we have 20 people from Virginia Tech here this week to help us launch this new era of the GAP Report. And many of them have name tags on, so you know who they are, and please introduce yourselves. Most of them have not been to the World Food Prize before. They haven't been to this event before. So they'll be looking forward to meeting many of you. I want to particularly thank the president of Virginia Tech, Tim Sands, for being with us today, as well as the dean of our College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, Alan Grant. And you have seen, I'm sure, several students wearing their Virginia Tech shirts here today. They are the future of the work that we do, and I'm really grateful that they made the trip to be with us today, and they've been a big part of this project and will be going forward. We have many special dignitaries and guests here in the audience today, and we have such a long program, I'm not going to try and thank everybody, but I'm really grateful that we've had such a wonderful audience here, and particularly grateful for those of you who have been longtime supporters of this project. And we look forward to continuing that engagement as we embrace our new home at Virginia Tech. The Global Agricultural Productivity Report and all of its related activities are supported by the Virginia Tech College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, as well as our supporting partners, Bayer Crop Science, Corteva Agriculture, John Deere, the Mosaic Company, and Smithfield Foods. In addition to financial support, these partners offer an important perspective on critical issues facing our agricultural systems today. You will have a chance to hear from all of them today during our program. I would like to personally thank the representatives from these companies who served as the leadership of the GAP report over the years, and many of whom are here today, some of whom couldn't be with us. Pam Striffler at Bayer Crop Science, Jennifer Billings of Corteva Agriscience. I would also like to note Doyle Carr, who has been a chair of the board for the GAP Report Initiative over the years, and a very special recognition to Jerry Flint, who was here at the beginning, and we wouldn't be here. This was very much part of his brainchild, this report, and so we're carrying on his legacy. Thank you, Jerry, for being here. Aaron Wetzel of John Deere is here. Ben Pratt of the Mosaic Company, and Stuart Leith of Smithfield Foods. Thank you all very much. We also have some wonderful consultative partners, and they provide knowledge and insight that really shapes the GAP report, and we are really pleased to be able to feature their stories every year and work with them to help present the report and to further our message of productivity for sustainability and nutrition. We are delighted to invite three new partners, consultative partners here today. The first is Taninger, and it's an affiliate of ACDI VOCA. And we have two representatives from the CGIAR system, Harvest Plus and SIP, the International Potato Center. So please join me in thanking them for being part of our team now. And they are joining our wonderful longtime partners, ACDI VOCA, the Congressional Hunger Center, the Farm Foundation, the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, and the Nature Conservancy, New Markets Lab, Purdue Center for Global Food Security, supporters of Agricultural Research Foundation, and the Doherty Water for Food Global Institute at the University of Nebraska. Thank you so much to all of you from those organizations who are here with us today and who've contributed material to the report here in 2019. Every year, the GAP report starts with what we call our Global Agricultural Sustainability Imperative. And we all know the statistics. Agriculture accounts for 24% of greenhouse gas emissions in the world and 71% of fresh water use. 150 million children under the age of 5 are stunted, and 38 million are overweight or obese. This year in the GAP report's Global Agricultural Sustainability Imperative, we also draw attention to some stats that maybe don't get as much attention as they need to. So I'll just highlight two in particular that I found quite interesting. The first is that the dogs and cats in the United States of America consume as many calories as 62 million Americans. That's a lot of food. It's a lot of animal products. I don't think that's been part of our conversation yet. Another one which surprised me, 1.3 million hectares of land is used to grow ornamental flowers, plants, and bulbs in this world. That's a lot of land. Again, an area in terms of sustainability that isn't getting much attention. So one of the things we hope to do this year in this report is maybe ask some questions that says, yes, agriculture is about food production, but it's part of a much larger agricultural and bioeconomy. And if we are going to truly address sustainability, we need to incorporate all these factors because they all work together. The GAP report this year, we are advocating for accelerating productivity growth to achieve our global goals for environmental sustainability and nutrition, while still providing consumers with the food and agricultural products that they need and want. Innovative agricultural technologies and best farm management practices combined with attention to ecosystem services really drive productivity growth, both give it a boost as well as help sustain that growth over time. And the report this year is really looking at some of these particular issues and opportunities, and you'll have a chance to hear from our speakers today about how these things work together. So now I would like to invite Tom Thompson to come to the stage. Tom is the Associate Dean of our College of Agriculture and the Director of Global Programs. The GAP report is at Virginia Tech because of his initiative and leadership, and he's going to share with us a little bit about our new home and how the GAP report fits with Virginia Tech's mission and goals.
And thank you for the introduction, and also thank you for your hard work and creativity that have resulted in another outstanding GAP report. The Global Agricultural Productivity Report was created in 2009 in the wake of the global food price crisis, and it was created to be a voice for increasing total factor productivity in agriculture as a path to food and nutrition security. For the first 9 years of its existence, the GAP report was produced by Global Harvest Initiative, or GHI. Although GHI has ceased operations, its legacy lives on in the GAP report, and Virginia Tech is proud to carry this work forward. The GAP report has gained widespread attention for its unique collaboration between the private agribusiness sector, conservation organizations, international multilateral agriculture institutions, universities, and NGOs that focus on the support of smallholder farmers. We're thrilled to be the new home for the GAP report for three main reasons. First, the impressive quality and reach of the report and the opportunity to launch the report at this prestigious event. Second, the opportunity to partner with the supporting and consultative partners that have already been mentioned by Ann. Third, because we believe in the message of the GAP report, the power of increasing total factor productivity in agriculture through science-based solutions as a pathway to food security and sustainable diets. The GAP report not only gives voice to our vision for productive and sustainable agriculture, but it has also brought new opportunities for our students and faculty to be engaged in the global conversation about strategies for achieving food and nutrition security. Through the GAP report, we're bringing prominent voices in this conversation to the Virginia Tech campus and creating opportunities for student engagement in this vital global conversation. We're thrilled to have 4 of our Virginia Tech students here with us today and 16 faculty and administrators, including, as Ann mentioned, our president, Dr. Tim Sands, and the dean of our College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, Dr. Alan Grant. The presence of so many from Virginia Tech reflects the excitement on our campus about the GAP report and the opportunities that it will bring to our university. We look forward to the prospects afforded by the GAP report for advancing the next generation of leaders, some of whom are here with us today, in national and global food security, sustainability, productivity, and nutrition. And so we're proud to produce the GAP report beginning in its 10th year and for many years to come. We're grateful to the supporting partners, the companies who have provided funding and wise guidance for the report and continue to do so, and to the consultative partners who share their time, expertise, and wisdom to help make this report a source of insight and inspiration. In addition to the consultative partners who supported the report before it came to Virginia Tech, as Ann mentioned, we have added 3 new consultative partners, and we're very proud to be working with them. You will hear stories from several of our partners this morning, and also you can read them in the 2019 GAP report. These stories illustrate the many ways that agricultural productivity can be enhanced throughout the world and how these initiatives make a positive difference in the lives of real people. Thanks to all of our partners, and we look forward to achieving great things together with you. Finally, thanks to you for attending this morning. We know that you are here because you share our vision for a food and nutrition secure world. We're excited to see how this report and the activities around it support our collective efforts for food and nutrition security going forward. Please take this opportunity this morning to learn about the findings and the stories of the GAP report, and also to learn more about Virginia Tech. We especially invite you to learn about our partnerships around the globe, about our work for food and nutrition security, natural resource conservation, animal and human health, youth engagement in agriculture and nutrition, and much more. This work is carried on by our people in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, Virginia Cooperative Extension, our College of Natural Resources and Environment, our College of Veterinary Medicine, and also by our colleagues at the Center for International Research, Education, and Development, and some of them are here with us this morning, including leadership from the USAID Integrated Pest Management Laboratory, which is housed at Virginia Tech. Come visit us at our campus, our beautiful campus in Blacksburg, Virginia, if you have not been, or if you have. Whatever you do, wherever you work in the world, Virginia Tech has something to offer. We're seeking new partners for the GAP report and our other initiatives in this all-important endeavor for humanity's future. So now, please enjoy the program and the lunch to follow, and thank you again for coming. Now I'd like to invite Dr. Jason Grant to the podium. Jason is a professor in the Department of Agricultural and Applied Economics and also heads up our Center for Agricultural Trade at Virginia Tech. Jason?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Tom, for the introduction. Strategies for meeting global demand. Agricultural producers use a number of strategies to increase their output to meet an expanding population, rising per capita incomes, and increasing dietary needs. These strategies, however, need to be used strategically so they do not lead to negative outcomes, such as losses in biodiversity, soil degradation and erosion, higher greenhouse gas emissions, and other environmental externalities. Producers can bring new land into production. They can extend the land and irrigation into new areas. They can increase or apply more efficiently the inputs on existing cultivated land that they use, or purchase more livestock to increase their output of meat, eggs, dairy, and poultry. The GAP report focuses on sustainable productivity growth and enables us to meet the needs of producers and consumers both today and tomorrow. Before we understand what productivity is, it is instructive to start with what it is not. Increasing agricultural productivity is not just producing more to feed a growing population. It is different from output, which refers to gross amount of crops or livestock produced. It is also different from yield, although yield is one component. The amount per unit of production, usually referenced to land. When we say we want to maximize agricultural productivity, we are not maximizing a one-dimensional problem. Productivity in agriculture, which we measure as TFP, or total factor productivity, measures how efficiently agricultural inputs are transformed into outputs across both space and time. TFP increases when more crops are produced, but the amount of land, labor, fertilizer, machinery, and other inputs that are used in the production of that output remains constant or even declines with technological advances. Since TFP tracks how efficiently we are transforming inputs, such as land, into outputs, it can shed light on the sustainability of our food and agricultural systems and help us track improvements we are making over time. It also helps us project TFP growth requirements to meet an expanding population, rising per capita incomes, and dietary needs. This is particularly important as we work towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, many of which relate to agricultural systems, protecting life on land, protecting life in the water, responsible production and consumption, and others. It is also important because improving agricultural productivity has been the world's most important defense against a recurring Malthusian crisis, which refers to the need of a growing population may outstrip the ability of humankind to produce and supply a nutritious food source. All right, so the 2019 Global Agricultural Productivity Index, the latest data from USDA's Economic Research Service indicate that TFP is not growing fast enough to sustainably meet the demand for food, feed, fiber, and bioenergy needed by 2050. Globally, TFP is rising, indicated by the orange line globally, at an average of 1.63%, but it's less than the estimated 1.73% needed to sustainably double agricultural output through productivity growth. TFP is strongest in China and South Asia, but it's slowing in the agricultural powerhouses of North America, Europe, and Latin America. TFP growth in low-income countries, indicated by the maroon red line in that graphic, is alarmingly low, just 1% per year. These gaps may seem small now, but these deficits in productivity accumulate and grow over time, threatening the environmental sustainability and economic vitality of our agricultural systems. Without increases in productivity, many people will not be able to afford nutrient-dense foods, such as animal-source proteins, fruits and vegetables, and instead may become dependent on foods made from cheaper cereal grains for most of their calories. Of course, there is some heterogeneity in the TFP growth. During the last 40 years, TFP growth has been the primary driver of global agricultural output, as shown in this graphic. As a result, agricultural output has increased by 60%, while global cropland devoted to the production of that output has increased by just 5%. Much of this progress has taken place in high-income countries, shown on the right graphic. In the US, for example, agricultural output increased 36% since 1982. At the same time, the total amount of annual soil erosion has decreased by 44%. This is thanks largely to widespread adoption of advanced seed technology, precision agricultural systems, and best management practices to conserve water and nutrients. We have seen similar advancements in animal agriculture, livestock production. Improvements in animal breeding, feed efficiency, manure management, and animal care and husbandry make it possible for the US to provide the world with nutritious animal protein production with significantly less emissions per unit of output. Virginia Tech's own Dr. Robin White, who you'll hear from later today, has estimated that if animal agriculture was eliminated completely in the US, it would reduce total US greenhouse gas emissions by just 2.9%. Our greatest productivity and sustainability challenges are in sub-Saharan Africa, which is pictured here, where land expansion, the portion of the red or maroon bars on this decomposition, is the primary driver of agricultural output growth. Strong population growth and persistent low agricultural productivity are driving farmers to open new land for pasture and crop cultivation. The size and buying power of Africa's middle class is growing more slowly, but the UN predicts that 18 African countries will double or even triple their current population. Education, management practice, and technology adoption will be critical priorities for this region. Latin America, by contrast, has seen very strong productivity growth, and they are important global suppliers of food, feed, crops, fruits and vegetables, and livestock products. Producers have invested in precision machinery. They've adopted advanced seed technologies and improved livestock management systems. There is a cautionary tale here. To maximize this investment, farmers are increasingly specialized and have expanded their operations to take advantage of this new efficiency. This, in course, has taken a toll on the region's biodiversity. Smart land use policy and increasing investment in access to improved technologies and practices can encourage producers to focus on the productivity of their current existing portfolio of crop and grazing land. Widespread and lasting change in agriculture are driven by policies, investments, and incentives that facilitate the adoption of agricultural technology, best practices, and attention to ecosystem services. The GAP report identifies 6 areas of focus. I want to take a minute to focus on one of these, reducing post-harvest loss and waste. To grow our way to a sustainable agricultural system, we must also ensure that everything we produce makes it to our table or another productive use. The most nutritious foods, fruits, vegetables, dairy, meat, and proteins, often end up going to waste. Not only is this a waste of nutrients, it's a waste of all the natural resources used to produce those products. Some of the other areas of the focus, as explored in the GAP report, include investing and investments in public sector, agricultural research and development, extension services, embracing science-based information and technology. And this includes both domestic embracement and global acceptance. Increasing access to markets for agricultural inputs and outputs, and expanding opportunities for regional and global trade. And with that, I would like to conclude with a short note on global trends on trade, and a small plug for our Center for Agricultural Trade in the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences at Virginia Tech. In 2018, a trade war of significant magnitude engulfed the US and many of its major trading partners. Agriculture continues to be under strain from this event and is facing incredible uncertainty as it has been caught in the crossfire of this trade dispute. Protectionist measures, what do? They reduce prices the producers receive for staple food production. They stifle innovation, and they delay or even eliminate investments or planned investments in the creation of new technology. The Center for Agricultural Trade at Virginia Tech is leading the charge to promote an efficient trading system where producers can access global markets for the sale of their output and consumers have access to an affordable, safe, and nutritious food supply year-round. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to turn it back to Anne for some presentations on the featured stories of the GAP report.
Thank you, Jason. It's great to have so many wonderful experts in-house at Virginia Tech, and we look forward to tapping into that expertise more and more as the years come. I'm going to ask our lightning presentation speakers to come up. I was thinking the other day that it's almost hard to remember now, but can I get a handheld microphone there, Dad? Thanks. Go ahead and take a seat right there. Back when the GAP report was created in 2009, there were not that many opportunities for the private sector to engage in conversations like this about global agriculture and nutrition. And the GAP report was really created in part to tell those stories. Well, things have changed a lot in the last 10 years. There are a lot more forums where we can share these stories. And even as the GAP report itself has evolved over time, we have retained that commitment to the stories and the input of the private sector as being absolutely critical to any solutions that we are going to find to the challenges that we face in terms of agriculture and nutrition. So I thought it would be appropriate, rather than talking about the companies that are part of our project and have provided some great stories for the report, for you to actually hear from them. And so we're just going to start and go down the line. Everybody will just introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about the stories that are in their report today. So we'll start with you, Jennifer.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jennifer Billings with Corteva Agriscience. And I think what struck me most about the GAP report is the convergence between the low productivity in emerging markets and what we're hearing from our colleagues at FAO, the increases in overall global food insecurity. To me, it seems a bit of a perfect storm. And I really firmly believe that public-private partnerships are needed more than ever to bring solutions to farmers across the globe in order to meet challenges related to climate, productivity, and to help farmers be able to feed themselves and their communities. I wanted to share a story of how Corteva is working in particular in this space with our partners. And several of our partners are in the audience today, USAID and ACDI VOCA, that are involved in that story. So thank you so much, first and foremost, for your amazing, incredible partnership. We are working together as Corteva to reach millions of smallholder farmers across the world with our seed and crop protection products. And in Tanzania, in particular, we are working on a project that will reach 400,000 smallholder farmers. We expect the productivity of those farmers to increase by at least 200%, and in some cases, 300%. And we are basing that on the successes that we have had with this model of partnership in Ethiopia with the same partners, actually, with USAID and ACDI VOCA from 2013 to 18, where we reached 250,000 smallholder farmers and increased their productivity by 300%. And I think what the power of these public-private partnerships is scale. Because really, if we're going to tackle these issues, we are going to have to take it to scale. And I think the other important component of our current partnership in Tanzania is technology. And I might be a bit biased because I work for an agricultural technology company, but I firmly believe that we have to have all the tools in the toolbox and look at these challenges and think about how we can empower farmers with technologies so that they can fight the latest pests, whether it's fall armyworm, or use new hybrid corn seed varieties that are even end up with less moisture content and therefore less aflatoxins in the end, or use herbicides that allow for more sustainable farming practices that allow farmers to even capture carbon in the soil. So technology, the power of technology to enable farmers to achieve productivity in a way that is, advances sustainable farming practices and achieves development outcomes is what we're aiming for in Tanzania and in many other places across the world. So thank you to our partners as well at Virginia Tech, and we appreciate everything that they do.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Stuart Leith. I'm with Smithfield Foods, and the partnership I'd like to share with you is detailed in the report. But it's what's a neat story about it is it's actually fostered and developed even more partnerships after that. 6 years ago, we partnered with the Environmental Defense Fund. I know everybody knows EDF. It's a well-respected environmental group that hasn't always seen eye to eye with Smithfield Foods. But we embarked on a project to reduce and have sustainable practices on 75% of our grain supply chain, our own supply chain, in terms of reducing nitrogen, implementing precision farming practices. We hired agronomists to help farmers, family farmers, raise grain and source that grain directly to our feed mills. That was a 5-year program. We actually seeded that and had 80%. It was over close to 600,000 acres of farmland under these programs. And what's neat about this is, and I want to share with you, is the power of a partnership like this is that we developed a relationship with EDF. We began to talk about other things, and they helped us commit to a 25% reduction in greenhouse gas across our entire value chain. That's something that we announced 2 or 3 years ago, as it reported in the Wall Street Journal. And that, in turn, has developed a partnership with Dominion Energy, which is a power company based in Virginia that's also a very large gas company, and a company here or close by in Missouri, Raceline Energy. And what we're doing now is producing biogas, renewable biogas on our hog farms coast to coast. So we're a large company. We're the largest pork producer, pork processor in the world. And I think in the future we might even be in the power business. So it's a pretty cool progression of partnerships that began with a fairly audacious goal to deal with our own supply chain, but blossomed after that into a lot of different opportunities because of the trust and relationship building that a partnership actually brings when it works well. So, thank you.
Thanks, Stuart.
Good morning. My name's Adam Hergis with the Mosaic Company, Sustainability Agronomist and Corporate Public Affairs. And I kind of want to talk about our journey that we took in 2008. And very similar to the GAP report being 10 years now, this partnership started about 11 years ago. Working with smallholder farmers in India. We also, as a company, we sell product there. And we wanted to figure out a way to improve agricultural productivity through community-led solutions, providing best management practices around sustainable ag production in areas in India. And for a successful partnership, being in a partnership for 11 years, you have to pick the right partner. And that partner for us was Segal Foundation. And it was because of the trust that they built within the community. Mosaic looking as an outsider working in this area, we had to build that level of trust, and you needed the right partner to do that. And so it was a really collaboration, and in this partnership, it's more of a transformative partnership and not a transactional partnership. So when we started in 2008, it was in 2 villages, and today we have worked with 60 villages, increasing agricultural productivity by 45%. In these areas and providing additional income of about $360 per hectare for these smallholder farmers. In addition to that, also we worked on education and we helped to renovate 24 government-run schools, helping to benefit nearly 5,000 students in that area as well. And with the semi-arid environment in India, in the areas where we work, water is a huge resource for them in order to have agricultural productivity, not just fertilizers. And so through that also we built 8 check dams that help to store 30 million gallons of water in the region for irrigation. And then we also worked on climate smart irrigation as well in these areas to help reduce inputs while increasing outputs. And so a huge partnership for us in this, and kind of helping to celebrate the 10 years of the GAP report, we wanted to talk about a very key partnership to Mosaic. So thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Aaron Wetzel. I'm a Senior Vice President at John Deere Financial, responsible for global sales and marketing, as well as our operations in the U.S., Canada, South America, and Australia. I've been a member of the GHI board and now transitioning to the Virginia Tech relationship. First of all, I'm very excited about this new partnership that we have with the Virginia Tech, and welcome to all of our Virginia Tech leaders here to Des Moines. Great to have you with us, and looking forward to an even brighter future with the GAP report. From John Deere's perspective, a 182-year history in agriculture, continuing to look for ways to drive innovation for our customers and help improve productivity around the world. I wanted to focus in this year's GAP report around what we're doing in Africa and really helping drive productivity and sustainability in agriculture. I think the first one I'm going to talk about is a little bit aligned to the colleague here on the panel talking about from Corteva. But in Ghana, we actually have partnered with ACDI, VOCA, Advance, and USAID on a demo plot to help demonstrate to growers the potential that they can see from a yield improvement with working with fertilizer, hybrid seeds, as well as mechanization. I think sometimes We underscore the opportunity for the proper placement of the seed, the proper care of that particular plant through its growing cycle, and mechanization is a key element to helping improve yield and productivity. And with that, we've seen a 7-time increase in yield for those particular demo plots that help us educate growers how they can leverage these technologies into their own individual fields. The other thing that's really interesting, and this is from a John Deere Financial perspective and the use of data in Africa, is what we're doing in Tanzania and Kenya, where subsistence and small producers are actually able to participate on an online platform called M-Pesa, where they actually buy their inputs and sell their crops. And through that, we're actually able to see financial information to be able to make credit decisions and actually extend to growers financial services to help them get their first step into the mechanization process. Customers there typically don't have bank accounts. We don't have a clearinghouse for a credit score like we enjoy here in the US. So you need to find other more adaptive and creative ways to be able to help producers get the products and the technology they need to be more productive and more sustainable. So those are 2 examples that John Deere is doing in Africa to help us move the needle in terms of productivity and sustainability.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Please join me in thanking our speakers. And I'm going to invite Tom to come up and introduce our next speaker. So I'll take that. Thank you.
Thanks very much to the panelists. And now I'd like to invite to the stage Dr. Alan Grant, who is Dean of our College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at Virginia Tech. Alan?
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. This is, as you've been hearing, this is a very exciting year for Virginia Tech, and this is the first time that Virginia Tech has hosted the GAP report, and there is a lot of excitement. I know that the report has been a very valuable tool for many of you in this room, and we look forward to working with you to carry on that legacy for many years to come. I also would like to thank the GAP Report's supporting partners for making this important work possible. Thank you so much to Bayer Crop Science, Corteva Agriscience, John Deere, the Mosaic Company, and Smithfield Foods. I recognize the important contributions of the consultative partners, and I especially want to welcome the newest members of this group, Tanager Harvest Plus, in the International Potato Center. So again, thank you to all of those supporters. We believe that the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences and Virginia Tech and the GAP report make a great partnership for a number of reasons. The challenges of increasing agricultural productivity that lay ahead in the coming decades will require new skill sets, global perspectives, and innovative ways to find new solutions. And that's why Virginia Tech is focusing so much on creating this next generation of agricultural leaders who will help us meet these challenges using new tools, new technologies, in ways that we have never imagined. I like the story of one of our Virginia Cooperative Extension agents who is working with a local family to implement precision agriculture techniques on their beef cattle operation. Every morning, the family's 10-year-old son checks on the cattle, checks on the herd, by flying a drone above the 250 cow herd to make sure everything is okay. And he can monitor the health and the well-being of these animals, even down to the individual cow basis. Now, he's 10 years old. Just think about this. Another 10 years, when hopefully he's a Virginia Tech student, think about the technologies that will be available. And perhaps he'll be involved in developing that next generation of technologies to address our future challenges. So this is why we're giving our students hands-on experiences both at our Virginia Tech campus and in countries around the world where they gain firsthand knowledge about the agricultural issues facing the world. We have students examining food security in South Africa, water issues in India, and technology trends in Ecuador. And these students are able to conduct research alongside award-winning faculty who are leaders in their fields of study, and these fields of study are as diverse as the world's agricultural needs. For example, we have aquaculture experts working in the Chesapeake Bay, and they take that expertise and that knowledge that they've learned by studying the Chesapeake Bay around the world to develop new and safe ways to grow seafood around the world. We have silvopasture experts working in the Blue Ridge Mountains to ultimately help farmers in Africa develop better ways to integrate cattle and crops to diversify their farming portfolio. And we have researchers based in Blacksburg who are collaborating with farmers in Senegal to grow mung beans. Although beans are not a traditional crop for the region, farmers have begun to plant them for their ability to thrive in harsh climates and, of course, their nitrogen-fixing properties. And this nitrogen-sensitive agriculture approach focuses on the nutritional benefits the crop provides to a region that is looking for a new source of protein. Projects like this illustrate how we're taking the research and the outreach expertise that we've honed for many, many years and how we share it with the world. During a panel discussion later here, you'll learn how one of our animal scientists, Robin White, is working on developing sensors in cattle to monitor behavior and movement and feed intake and other things that ultimately will lead to improvements in the management of our livestock. You've heard from Jason Grant this morning, who leads our Global Trade Center, works with Virginia farmers to find new markets for their exports, which not only benefit our local producers, but help create a reliable source of food for countries that need it most. But we know we can't do this alone. We've heard a lot about partnerships today. Partnerships are so vital for our shared success. For example, we've had a long-standing and fruitful relationship with Smithfield Foods, the world's largest pork producer and processor. When Smithfield needed research conducted on animal health, they partnered with our scientists, and together they found solutions. And ultimately, that research not just didn't benefit Smithfield, but it benefited the entire pork industry. Smithfield also provides generous student scholarships, which helps our students achieve their greatest potential, and again, creates leaders for the future workforce. And all of this goes to the heart of the land-grant mission of research and teaching, extension, and outreach. In this world that is getting smaller every day, we know that we have to look beyond the boundaries of the university campus to achieve the mission. This is one reason that we created the Global Programs Office in the college. Dr. Thompson told you earlier today, the office focuses on helping students serve globally, to enrich communities at home and abroad, and to develop partnerships that address some of the most challenging issues faced by society. And I encourage you to meet with Tom later today or later in the week to learn more about what his office is doing and the potential partnerships that exist. The college's global view of the world fits perfectly into the global context that Virginia Tech operates under today. When Dr. Tim Sands became president of the university in 2014, he reimagined our role to become not just a land-grant university, but a global land-grant university, one that's taking our expertise and sharing it not just with Virginia, but the world at large. Under President Sands' leadership, the university has expanded its reach, its footprint, with the aim of serving communities and helping the university live up to its motto, that I may serve. So please join me in welcoming President Tim Sands.
Well, thank you, and it's truly great to be here. It's a real privilege for me. I've spent a quarter of a century as a professor at a series of land-grant institutions, and I've known 2 World Food Prize winners. But I have to say that since the GAP report came to Virginia Tech, I've learned more about the big picture, the relationship between agriculture, sustainability, and the human condition around the world than I learned in the previous quarter century. So we're really thankful to be in this role to help lead and to help produce the GAP report. Virginia Tech is here for 2 reasons. First, we're proud and honored to be hosting the Global Agricultural Productivity Report. And I want to thank Alan and join Alan in thanking the GAP report's supporting and consultative partners for their enthusiastic support of this work over the years. We look forward to building new connections with you and invite others to get to know both of us better. Since 2010, the GAP report has been a call to action that urges world leaders to invest in proven strategies to produce food, feed, fiber, and biofuel in a sustainable manner. The GAP report and its tracking of agricultural productivity growth are vital tools for policymakers, agribusinesses, UN agencies, universities, researchers, and non-governmental organizations as they work around the world to meet the demands and needs of growing populations. The report is now, as you heard, part of the portfolio of CALS Global, a unit within our College of Agriculture and Life Sciences that was formed in 2016 with the goal of building partnerships, creating new opportunities, and empowering success while serving globally. We are looking forward to continuing this partnership in the years to come. And that brings me to the second reason that Virginia Tech is here today, and Alan's already alluded to it. Since our founding nearly 150 years ago, we have proudly conducted our land-grant mission to provide the most relevant research possible to our stakeholders, who can then use that information to help communities thrive. We've educated generations of students who are leaders in their fields, from working with local farm lending institutions in Southwest Virginia, all the way to leading crop improvement programs in Africa. Our land-grant mission is one of discovery, outreach, and education, and now more than ever, we embrace our role as a global land-grant institution. The issues faced by the people in the Appalachian Mountains of Southwest Virginia are not all that different than the ones facing people in the Andes of South America. Changing climates, global economies, and shifting food demands are challenges we all face, and even if the tools we use to address them may vary. At Virginia Tech, we have students working alongside researchers on every continent. And there are too many programs to list, but I'd like to highlight a couple. One program with a long history of success is the Integrated Pest Management Innovation Lab. This lab is funded by USAID to address health, environment, and economic issues in developing countries through integrated pest management technologies. They have developed technologies and practices that make it possible for some of the world's poorest farmers to fight invasive pests. In South America, we are working with farmers to develop cost-effective ways to use technology to adopt sustainable agricultural practices. Our agricultural economists are setting up programs in which farmers receive text messages reminding them of best management practices when using pesticides. And our data show that these programs are effective. Working around the world is a big challenge, and we know we can't do it alone. That's why we value the partnerships we're building around the globe. One such partnership involves the Center of Excellence in Sustainable Agricultural and Agribusiness Management at Egerton University in Kenya. Since 2017, CALS Global has been working with Egerton to develop research programs that build on the strengths of both universities to produce protein and crops more efficiently. The goal is to increase nutrition and well-being while raising household economic power. This year, we sent our second group of Virginia Tech researchers back to Kenya to continue to build on that collaboration. Key to this international collaboration has been my counterpart, Rose Mwanya, the Vice Chancellor of Egerton University. And Dr. Moanya is here with us today, and I'd like to take a moment to thank her for that partnership. We certainly look forward to more years of successful collaboration. We just learned in a chat beforehand that our collaboration actually goes back several decades, and this is a renewal period for us, so it's wonderful. We look forward to having you in Blacksburg shortly. None of this would be possible without making investments in our future, and Virginia Tech is committed to putting the resources needed forward to make global impact. Virginia Tech is a partner with the Commonwealth of Virginia to build a revolutionary 1 million square foot innovation campus in the DC metro region, which you may have heard about, focused on graduate level education and research in computer science and related fields. The new campus is part of the tech talent pipeline that attracted Amazon HQ2 to Northern Virginia. It will increase our industry partnerships in the region and, in the face of it, boost undergraduate enrollment in computer science, computer and software engineering, and related disciplines. But we all know that those graduates won't work just for Amazon. In today's data-driven world, they will have opportunities in practically any field. And as you know, one field that needs software engineers and computer scientists and those with those skills is agriculture. We heard a little bit about drones measuring crop production, tractors coming with precision technology. We have industry partners working on a robot that can pick fruit. So farming is becoming increasingly complex. That's why Virginia Tech recently launched the Smart Farm Innovation Network. Located in every corner of Virginia, this network of more than 120 centers will develop and deploy new technologies that will empower farmers to capitalize on the developments of today and meet the demands of tomorrow. We have scientists embedding sensors in cattle and using big data to monitor livestock and horses to develop better management practices. We have researchers flying drones over Virginia's new hemp fields to monitor pathogens and microbes which could contaminate crops. These programs are relying on software engineers and computer scientists who present a new generation of tech talent. Investments in technology is important for the future, but we also understand the value of investing in our most tried and true resource, our people. The Virginia Cooperative Extension agents and specialists work across the Commonwealth, bringing science and solutions to people who can use it to help improve their lives and their communities. We regularly send teams of 4-H agents to Senegal to promote youth engagement in food science, safety, preservation, and entrepreneurship. They're working with 4-H Senegal to take what's best about 4-H and then adapt it to the Senegalese context. We're making investments in our students because we all know the future is in their hands. One thing I enjoy when I get bogged down with administration is to get out of the office and spend time talking with our students about their goals, their ideas, and their commitment to service in the world that they're inheriting. Because they see further than my generation into the future, they have a different view in some cases, sometimes challenging view of the future. But I feel like I learn from them more than I teach them. We know some of our best learning experiences happen outside the classroom, and that's why our students, several of them, are here in Des Moines to learn from you, and why we send students to Africa to learn about food security in developing nations. These experiences will make them the leaders we need for the future. And as everyone in this room knows, we have our work cut out for us. There will be 2 billion more mouths to feed, a shifting global appetite, and changing climate to address. But I actually have an optimistic attitude toward this. I'm optimistic that our partnerships will yield solutions. I'm optimistic that research and innovation will help meet our global demands. And I'm certainly optimistic that the students here today will lead us to a better tomorrow. And we're excited to have Virginia Tech as part of that future. So thanks again for being here and for all you do to help communities around the globe thrive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Sands, for...
By the way, I have 5 grand dogs and 1 grandchild.
Ah, there you go. Well, I'd like to go ahead and invite our wonderful panel to come and join me on the stage. So just come up together and we'll do very brief introductions. But we have a couple of goals for our panel discussion today. One is to kind of put a human face on some of the numbers we've been talking about. The GAP report has always prioritized human stories because the numbers are important, but if we don't understand what the numbers mean for people, we're less likely to take action. So we're going to ask our panelists about that a little bit. Also want to hear from them in their very different roles in many different parts of the world. What are their strategic priorities when it comes to productivity and sustainability? And then third, I've asked all of them to think of a question or a thought that we need to be asking ourselves that maybe we're not asking, and to leave us with something to come away with that may challenge us in what we're thinking or stimulate some new ideas. So I'm not going to do big, long introductions. These are wonderful folks and have great things to say, and I'd much rather have them talk to you than me. But I'm going to start here with Miguel, who's our Undersecretary for Agriculture in Mexico, but also a very familiar face and a friend to many people in this room from his years as the Director of the Washington office for the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture. Miguel, thank you so much for taking the time to come and be here. So share some thoughts. As you're traveling around Mexico and seeing small-scale farmers and looking at what their challenges are, what kinds of things are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Thank you, Ann. First of all, thank you for allowing me to participate in this very gender equal but I am totally used that from my past experience with Global Harvest. But thank you. Now, kidding aside, I think yesterday was Rural Women's Day, so it's really a pleasure to be around this wonderful set of professionals that will bring a lot of experience. When we took office about 10 months ago, we encountered a Mexico that was truly perplexing for many of us. It is a Mexico that on one hand is very active and progressive. We are the 10th or the 11th powerhouse in food production around the world. However, when we look at Mexico more closely, we found a Mexico that was divided in an agriculture that is very dynamic, among the best agricultural systems in the world, but also an agriculture conformed mainly by smallholder farmers that's very behind current dates. In that agriculture, we find that about 60% of our people live in poverty, 17% live in extreme poverty, and when we translate that, it's probably close to 20 million people living in extreme poverty. 25% do not receive an income from their work in the fields. So we found this Mexico that is very much divided. And that put not only pressure on us, on the administration, on closing the gaps. And that's basically what we are trying to do is how do we close these gaps between the agricultural sector that has been very progressive and this agricultural sector that has been forgotten. And that's not an easy way, there is not an easy solution. So we are focusing our efforts in closing the gap, putting more attention to the smallholder farmers, bring them hope at this particular stage. This is the first thing that we've been doing, bring them hope, make them believe that they are part of the new Mexico. And that's probably one of the major challenges that we have. In doing that, we are changing the way that subsidies, and we call them subsidies on incentives, had been done. We are looking into developing new system to attend smallholder farmers. At this stage, we have a program that is serving about 3 million smallholder farmers. We are taking advantage of successful programs such as Masagro. I have some of my friends here in Masagro. We are expanding that program across the country. The task is not easy because there are no answers for this in the books. In the books, we either look at smallholder farmers or we either look at the big technology farmers, but no one has told us how to create this policy, this new policy context, these differentiated programs between the smallholders and largeholders. So that's our main concern. We want to live a Mexico that is more equal, a Mexico in which smallholder farmers have the hope to access a better living conditions. And that, I think, is our challenge for the next 4 or 5 years.
That's great. Thank you. Rose Mwanya has just been introduced to the Vice Chancellor of Edgerton University, and we were speaking the other day talking about some of the nutritional challenges in Kenya and how different they can be, different types of nutritional challenges in different areas, and the ways that you see those play out at the university. And could you share a little bit about that with us?
Okay, thank you very much, Anne. I want to thank you for allowing me to be here and be able to talk to my friends. Now, Edgerton University is very much agricultural known in Africa. And for a long time, we have trained a number of Africans in agriculture, especially agricultural extension. We focus on the productivity, but we have a few challenges when we talk about that. In Kenya, we have diverse ways of looking at nutritional challenges because somebody said this morning that you can have so many cows, and I don't know that sometimes we have them just for seeing, but not to eat. You can find somebody dying there when the cow is also dying, and you wonder why we cannot slaughter that cow to eat. That is part of the nutritional challenge. The other challenge is that just the lack of knowledge on what to produce at what time. In certain areas of the country, it's fairly dry, but it's not as dry as Israel. I always use that example because Israel, they produce a lot of food with very little water. And we don't challenge ourselves to see how we can irrigate the land to be able to produce enough food. That's one way. The other one is just lack of knowledge. You just don't know what you are supposed to eat at what time, or the being ignorant of some of the foods which are very nutritious to the people around us. And at this point, you'll find that at Edgerton, we are collaborating with people who, some universities who are focusing in the production of insects, which is a very rich protein for the people around. But we shun it down because we are not used to it. And those are some of the challenges that are coming out. So a number of us, if you ask, why are you not eating this food? They don't even want to try. And it is very nutritious in certain nutrients, which we don't really look at. And the other one is simply not knowing how to balance the little food that we have. Well, if I eat this and that, I'm going to get the nutrients that are required. So those are some of the challenges that we have.
Great. Thank you so much. Megan Seibel from Virginia Tech is here, but she's wearing many, many hats, which is why I'm so glad that she is here. The first hat I'm going to ask her to wear is as sort of our former Deputy Secretary of Agriculture for the Commonwealth of Virginia. And during your time there, you got to know Virginia agriculture very well, and you came to see what some of the challenges are for the industry and for the farmers in that region.
Yep. Thanks, Anne, for inviting me to wear that hat today and speak with all of you. Virginia is not unlike just about every other state in the United States and provinces and countries around the world where agriculture is our #1 industry. And in Virginia, we take that very seriously, and in our governor's cabinet have a secretary that combines ag and forestry because of the synergy between those two industry groups, overseeing Department of Forestry and Department of Ag responsibilities. And so it gives us an opportunity to think through proactively what that space looks like. Virginia's ag economy, I think, is unique in the diversity of what we grow and how we grow it and how we embrace. Being in a state that has quite a difference in topography and geography as you move from east to west and north to south, not uncommon to other places. We've got huge urban and rural divides and some of the opportunities for connection, but also great challenges with disconnection that go with those. And so there's some pieces that pose there. I think the other piece as we talk about the complexities of the issues that we're facing, the things that came out in the GAP report, thinking about how we address issues in each of our home areas, states, provinces, and nations, but then also to think about those global impacts and relationships as, what that looks like when we start collaborating with others. So I think in my time in our secretariat and in the governor's office, one of the big opportunities was thinking about what that looked like. So if we're thinking about impacts of production agriculture on water quality as a coastal state, feeding the bay and or other rivers and tributaries, then there was ample opportunity to think proactively with natural resources. When we think about having the deepest natural waters on the East Coast and a robust port system that also has land infrastructure and what that means for our ability to capitalize on relationships across the country and across the globe, there are profound discussions to be had with commerce and trade. When we think about innovation and technology coming down the pike and what that means for young producers, Secretary of Technology is a big piece of that. And then also the food and health issue and what that looks like when we actually partner with Health and Human Services and think about the output of the food that we're producing and what that means for our children's welfare and health. So there's some big pieces there. I think the other thing that we would be remiss in ignoring is the environmental pieces. We talk about that a lot in this report. But environment and also energy. And so thinking about where agriculture is in that space and thinking about conversion of lands, reuse of lands. So for example, it's been mentioned in the remarks when we talk about the diverse economies in our state in particular, far southwest. And so when we look at the coal region and what's happened with coal economy nationally and globally, economic collapse in some places, how we can better think through what that means for energy. So where we've been putting emphasis on offshore wind, also thinking through what that might mean for solar. And so for the power company's perspective from infrastructure standpoint, flat land is the best place to put a solar array. So rather than pulling prime fertile land out of production, how can we figure out a better way to put it on flat, reclaimed surface mine land, and then capitalize on an underground mine, for example, that's now backfilled with naturally cool ambient waters as a hydrocooling opportunity for some of the infrastructures for the electrical grids that might need to go in. So it's going to take that balance of infrastructure, but also the embracing of what it means to those cultures and communities. We have one county, just for example, from a policy standpoint, adjacent to Washington, D.C., that has a greater population of voters than the entire Southwest 1/3 of our state. And so when you're talking about policies that are driving what's happening in those places where they are trying desperately to rebound from economic shifts, to be able to give them some voice and figure out a way to bring that culture to the table and think about the implications of those policies is a critical opportunity, I think, for all of us in wherever we live in the world.
Great. Thank you so much, Megan. So Robin White, Assistant Professor in Animal and Poultry Science at Virginia Tech. Your name has been mentioned already several times this morning. You've been looking at this issue of productivity and sustainability and the conversations we're having about what's the role of livestock or not, and share with us some of the things that you're finding and some of your thoughts as we're looking at this.
So I'd like to first say it's an absolute privilege to be able to share my thoughts with you here today. As an animal scientist, we're faced with this question constantly: what role do animals play in our global food production system? And there's really two common arguments against animal agriculture. The first of which is human health related, and the second is environmental impact oriented. And I like to use these two as an example of the incredible challenge we have as agriculturalists today, because we have to make the best policy and practice decisions that we have given the science that's available. So from the human health standpoint, historically, large evaluations of cohort studies suggest that animal agriculture products, red meat in particular, is associated with things like cardiovascular disease and colon cancer. As a great example, just earlier this month, we had a report come out that contradicted those claims. So how do we make policy or practice decisions when our scientific knowledge is in flux? And I try to go to mechanistic-based science, or perhaps the more robust information when thinking through that lens. So from that standpoint, with human health, we know that humans have requirements for certain nutrients. And particularly our vulnerable populations have requirements for omega fatty acids, for vitamin B12, for calcium, and for digestible amino acids, or high-quality protein sources. Animal products provide high concentrations of those different nutrients. And so when used in diets, in moderation, they provide an opportunity to fulfill those nutrient requirements. Now, the really unique thing about animal products is that they have very high nutrient to calorie ratios, meaning that you can fulfill these micronutrient requirements without exceeding energy requirements or without exceeding your voluntary food intake, which is a really critical problem that we have both in developed countries from the standpoint of our obesity epidemics, but also in developing countries, because humans naturally will consume to the level of their energy requirement, but not beyond, which means that we often have kind of masked micronutrient deficiencies in those populations. Now, from the environmental standpoint, we see exactly the same predicament. Historically, the environmental impact of livestock products has been called into question as perhaps an unneeded, excessively high environmental impact, particularly from the standpoint of greenhouse gas emissions. Just earlier this year, the group at Oxford, Kane and collaborators, highlighted the fact that the way that we calculate carbon footprints is likely a logical fallacy, that the methane, in particular from ruminants, that is included in a carbon footprint is part of a natural carbon cycle. And so it shouldn't be penalized the same way that carbon from extracting fossil fuels that were not previously part of that natural carbon cycle should be accounted for. So again, we try to make policy and productive decisions based on the information we have available, and science continues to change kind of the rules of that game. So going back to kind of the mechanistic or the most reliable information we have, anything that we can do to enhance productivity of our livestock production systems will improve not only a carbon footprint, but also things like water and land footprints. So we focused quite a bit on trying to understand how livestock operators can do things like leverage genetic selection, nutritional management, and reproductive efficiency to try and improve productivity of their operations, because that seems to be the most pragmatic and probably the most effective way to address the environmental impacts of livestock production. Of course, sustainable agriculture has to go beyond just environment, and thankfully improving productivity also helps to do things like enhance economic viability of those operations and improve worker welfare. So there's an opportunity for multiple benefits when we take that approach.
Great. Thank you so much, Robin. Christy, you are an agricultural education and advocacy expert, and you spend a lot of time with farmers here in the U.S., and you hear what's on their mind and how they are understanding the challenges that they're facing, both in terms of climate and markets and everything else. Tell us a little bit about what you're hearing from the farmers that you work with.
Sure. What we've learned at Bayer, and I've been with the company about 5 years, and we know that as a large agribusiness company, people look to us for solutions and guidance and direction, and what are we going to do next? They're looking for the next innovation. And what we know is that we also need to listen well. So in the spirit of that, who in the room is a farmer? Raise of hands. Excellent. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Because we're talking a lot about you, and honestly, we should be talking with you, and we should be listening to you. And luckily, because of our global communications infrastructure, it is amazing that we can do that virtually. I consulted with Ag Twitter before I came into the room today, and I said, hey, what is working in agriculture? What isn't working in agriculture? What do you want this room of policymakers who are discussing the future of your industry to know? And it was across the board it really depended on how the group views where they can have their voice heard. They know genetics are working well. They know collaboration with industry and academia and nonprofits, as we've heard discussed today, working very well. They know that there is a gap in understanding between agriculture and the consumer, the end consumer. And we've heard that a lot at Bayer. We've learned a lot of lessons from that. Our farmer voices around the world want to be heard. They don't want regulations to be put in place without consulting them. They don't want to have be absent from the conversations about nutrition and about production. They need to be included in the conversation around generation gaps and labor challenges on the farm. So as we're going not only in the US and around the world, we're hearing from farmers, please let our voices be heard and please connect with us. But how many of you know a farmer personally? Again, question for the audience. Excellent. This is amazing because we are the agriculture thought leaders, right? A lot of people, including myself, 5 years ago, I would have had to Google to find a farmer voice. I don't know any farmers, didn't know any farmers before coming into agriculture. And that in and of itself is a challenge that we are all poised to help address. We can help amplify the voices of the handful of farmers in here that we're talking about, but that we all know. So my challenge to all of you is to not only listen, but find ways to engage in the advocacy space. Because if all the ideas stay inside our little bubble, we will not have an impact like we want to have, and sustainability will still remain kind of a buzzword in our own spaces.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to sort of tailor some of our next questions here, knowing that we're a little short on time. But Miguel, you also understand Latin American agriculture, not just Mexico. And you've seen, I think that Latin American farmers are tending to get a bit of a bad rap these days as folks who just want to cut down forests to grow more crops or raise more cattle. But we know that there's a lot more to Latin American agriculture, and there's a lot that the world can learn from Latin America. Give us a different picture. Paint another picture for us about agriculture and farming in Latin America.
Thank you. I think I have to go back to a report that Genia, who's here in the audience, wrote about 10 years ago, which Latin America, the future breadbasket for the world. And I think Latin America is not only a future breadbasket, it's the only region that really has land reservoirs that can still be expanded without affecting forest. Is a region with more water available for agriculture. So Latin America is posed to play a very vital role for the future of food security in the world. And I think is sometimes not well understood by many of the politicians and many of the people who are in development. But Latin America has also challenges. Mm-hmm. And some of the challenges that we have and that we are facing today are not only in agriculture, but in the political structure. Look at what is happening in Brazil, what is going to happen probably in Argentina, and what is happening in Ecuador and Mexico. So many of the future of agriculture is going to be related with the political future of the countries. I think there are several challenges. I think we need to continue to stress the importance of sustainable practices in agriculture, climate smart agriculture, or however you want to call it. Move into silvopastoral production systems for livestock. That's very urgently. But also we need to continue to work on policy issues for family farming. 70 to 80% of the farmers are family farmers. And also we need to continue to find ways to link in smallholders to farmers. And it's funny because linking smallholders to farmers was keywords about 10 years ago, and today it looks like everybody has forgotten that. But the reality is that we need to continue to work with linking smallholders to farmers sustainably. That is, that they can do it on their own. I think that's a must. And then the other thing that we need to be aware, and just because we're short on time, but we can talk about this as long as you want. But the other thing that we need to start looking is what is the next trade map of the world is going to be. with all these protectionist measures moving in the United States, and I have to say it, in the United States, in Europe, is creating a havoc in world trade for agriculture. What's going to happen? So we need to start thinking on that. We need to bring the countries together, and that's what I think international cooperation is very important. The future of trade in agriculture is going to be key for the future of Latin America, and I would say for the future of the world. Mm-hmm. If we don't look at that closely, if we have, if we do not make the WTO and the agreements that we had move forward, and we look backward, I think the future of food security for millions of people are going to be in jeopardy, and that's affecting everyone. So those are some of the challenges that I see. I see a good farmers that are producing some of the best commodities. I mean, you want coffee, the best coffee comes from Latin America. It doesn't come from any other place but Latin America. The best bananas come from Latin America. The best mangoes come from Latin America. the best avocados. And if you want to put more, some of the best wine and surely the best tequila comes from Latin America.
That's great. Thank you. Rose, we were talking yesterday, and you were mentioning all of the ways that your students are becoming entrepreneurs, and you are helping them develop a new future in food and agriculture. Can you share with us some of those stories? Because I was really impressed with all the different things your students were doing.
Okay, thank you very much. At Egerton, we have been doing, I would call, traditional agriculture, but we have discovered it is not working because everybody is doing agriculture. And everybody, when they finish, they want to get out there to be employed. And we are discovering that the jobs are getting fewer and fewer. So we are focusing our agricultural production now on entrepreneurship. Our students, we are encouraging them to become entrepreneurs. And we are starting right in the university where if they produce milk, then the milk products which they produce, like yogurt, they can pack them themselves and be able to sell among the students. So if you come to Egerton, you'll find different packs of yogurt in bottles. While the university packs in big packs, the students use different bottles. They also we also farm in honey or bee keeping. And these students, when they harvest their honey, they pack them in small bottles. And that is what the other students can afford. So that is very common. We are now encouraging most of the students to become entrepreneurs. And we used to have in the university entrepreneurs from outside coming to do business within the university. Sorry, when I came in, I have decided to remove all of them and let the students become the entrepreneurs in those shopping centers. So they are now their own entrepreneurs within the student community. And I think this is very encouraging. And with the partnerships which we are having, I think we are learning a lot from each other. And this is quite healthy for us. We feel that way. Yeah.
Great. Love it. Megan, I'm going to ask you to put on your farmer hat. And she is a livestock and wine grape farmer in Virginia. And you were sharing with me the other day some of the challenges to sustainability and productivity that you are seeing in your own operations that maybe we don't think about as much as we need to.
Thanks. I'm going to err on the side of brevity because the sooner we finish the panel, the sooner we all thank a farmer when we enjoy our lunch. But I think from the perspective of being in production, there are probably three sort of main aspects of sustainability that I think about a lot. And for the record, I grew up in a military family outside of DC and married into little over 20 years ago, 22 years ago now. So have sort of gone in headfirst, hook, line, and sinker, and thinking through what those external perspectives mean for people really understanding what we're facing as producers around the world, but then also those opportunities. So I think from an environmental sustainability standpoint, probably one of the biggest things we've been able to do is think about diversifying the economy of our farm operation, but doing so in a way that embraces the physical structures and the land and the soil type and things where we are. So for example, when we needed to diversify to figure out how to keep another generation on the farm, we're on slopey, rocky soils on a mountainside with a lot of limestone outcropping. We took advantage of being in a position where we had a wine industry in the state that was growing pretty quickly and a lot of foreign winemakers coming in. And so I can say as a young producer with very small children, to have a French winemaker come from Champagne and crawl around in the dirt and lick the soil and mumble something in French that I didn't understand about limestone outcroppings, and this is where we want you to plant this clone, is a pretty tremendous opportunity, but it's allowed us to continue going. The other piece of sustainability, I think, is self-education and what that looks like. So does it mean going to technical meetings that perhaps somebody at the land grant is putting on so that it can advance the practice of growers? Is it sitting on an industry board so that you feel like you're at the table when decisions are being made and you have a voice of things that are coming down the pike? And then I think the other big piece that we sometimes forget about is no amount of environmentally friendly and sustainable practices we put in place are going to matter in the long run if we cannot do a better job of thinking through succession planning and what it looks like bringing in the next generation of our farms. If our farm gets sold tomorrow because of urban sprawl, it will end up being a neighborhood just like all of the apple and peach orchards that we face across the highway are now that were hayfields 30 years ago. And so knowing that my children want to come in, but they want to have a much more proactive forward-facing relationship with the general public in that region, what that looks like for embracing technology, agritourism potentially, and or business demographics is a much different stance than the generation ahead of us certainly had and as they envisioned that property where they thought it was always going to stay rural. So I think those are big challenges for us no matter where we live.
Thank you. Robin, I know you've been thinking some big thoughts and some challenging questions. Share some things with us. Give us a challenge to walk away with today.
Yeah, I think that as a mathematical modeler, that's really what I'm trained to do. I find myself commonly in this predicament of sitting in my office, I call it my ivory tower, divorced from reality, working on the mathematically optimal food production system. And I look at reports that come out proposing diets and things, and I'll critique them and highlight, if we changed it this way, this would be an optimal food production system. And it occurred to me a year or two ago that that really doesn't matter if the food production system is not something that's biologically feasible, that's economically sustainable, or that's socially relevant. And so I find one of the biggest questions in this space, how do we close that gap between kind of the planning questions and the physical implementation? And I think that there's a lot of elements to that, one of which is whose job is it to tell farmers they need to change their farming system? If I came to you tomorrow and said you don't get to farm, you don't get to make wine anymore, you're going to now grow corn. Is that whose job is that in our social construct? That's a really complex question, and it's an important thing we need to be asking to try and close this gap between the planning of food production systems and their implementation. Certainly economics can go to addressing that to some extent, but I don't think it's the only solution. And in some, kind of related to that, we have this question about how people use food, because it's not just about producing the food, as Rose highlighted for us. We can produce insects. If nobody's going to eat them, what's the purpose of producing them? So we need to get at this question of food waste or food usability in these discussions as well. And so although I think total factor productivity is probably the right focus, one has to ask the question whether or not one way to close this gap between the planning and the practical would be to change the output metric in that, to focus on people fed rather than production of food.
Great. Christy, I know that as Bayer, all the changes that you all have been through, but you are continuing to expand your commitments to making the world a more sustainable place. So tell us a little bit about some of the more recent commitments and the goals that you all have set.
Sure. So one of the things that our company has done is really taken a hard look at how we can really propel the industry forward. And we formalized last month, again, kind of 3 areas where we see that we can make a big difference in how agriculture looks in terms of sustainability. And I use sustainability with a big S. So that's in terms of productivity, environmental performance, and the people component, the social innovation side of things. And you'll be able to see online, we've kind of taken a 30-30-100 approach where we're looking to reduce our greenhouse gases by 30% in the regions and the key crops where Bayer operates. We are also looking to reduce our environmental impact of how we manage weeds and other environmental inputs by 30% by 2030. We also are looking at impacting and really equipping 100 million smallholder farmers to do a lot of the things that we've talked about today, to have access to education, to have access to the best technologies, to use things that, frankly, in the developed world, we take for granted. I heard a Nigerian farmer who joined us in Germany a couple of weeks ago say, "I only need a motorcycle, why are you building me a plane?" It was a tremendous learning opportunity for all of us in the room, with full bellies and the access to all of the hybrid technologies, with GM traits that we can use, and the mechanization and self-driving tractors and drone technologies and digital platforms that tell us acre by acre and meter by meter what a plant needs. And we have people that are just trying to feed their families, and they need access to that technology. So as a company, we've committed to really expanding how we look at that smallholder segment, to do some of what Miguel's talking about, of bridging the gap between we know what works here, we know what works best here. How do we combine those best practices and those technologies so that smallholder farmers, who really ultimately will see the most benefit from some of the work that all of us are doing, can really embrace it and have access to it, and we kind of remove some of those obstacles and barriers. And I'll add to that, we still have to listen. We're forming a sustainability council with 12 folks from across a whole host of industries, NGOs, healthcare, agriculture, and the like, so that we have some people speaking into our work, that we're not just working in an ivory tower that Robin just mentioned, that we're actually in touch with the folks that have expertise to bring to us, and we can try things on. Piloting and trials and partnerships and joint ventures and investing in ag tech, all of those things are where Bayer will be showing up, because we've got some resources to do that work. We can help get things on a really big footprint if someone wants to try it. We can listen to the disruptors in our industry and say, "Oh, that's fascinating. That will upset our apple cart." But we need to listen to that, and we also need to learn from them, and vice versa. We've got some amazing scientists that have come into Bayer in healthcare, in pharma, in agriculture and crop science, and we're having to cross-train. We're learning from each other. We've got genetics knowledge in the medical space that now is helping in the agriculture space, and vice versa. And I think there's just tremendous opportunity for us to listen and learn from one another, and that's really where sustainability can take hold.
Thank you. I so wish we had more time, but I also know we need lunch, and we've got a deadline of 1 o'clock. So thank you all so much for being here. Please join me in thanking our wonderful panelists. And please come see us in Blacksburg, and we look forward to seeing you next year. Thanks so much.